What's going on, everybody? It's Realistic with Realistic Productions doing another tutorial for SoundOracle.net. And what I'm doing today is I'm going to go over some different stereo tools and how you can use these and apply these onto your mixes, onto your vocals, onto your synths, whatever you want to use it for to create a much wider sound. And there's a lot of cool ones by Soundtoys and Waves and FabFilter that we're going to be able to dive through, and there's going to be a couple UAD ones in there as well. Alright, let's dive in.
Alright, so I got Pro Tools open up here, but as I always say, these tips and tricks will work in any DAW, and if you haven't already, go ahead and open up your DAW of choice. You'll find that you'll learn a lot more if you do these along with me. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over some different stereo tools that you could apply in your mix, and this isn't so much meant to go through every single stereo tool and every parameter on that. That would make a really long tutorial, but I can always go make tutorials on individual stereo tools if need be, if I get enough requests for that. But this is just meant to just kind of show you some options and kind of show you some different things that you can do. In today's music, it's really important to have that stereo image. People want to hear something really wide instead of something that's just kind of really small and narrow. So one thing though to keep in mind before we dive in is that when you're using stereo tools, you always kind of run into the risk of phase issues. And basically, I won't go too much in depth in it because I'm doing a tutorial on phase cancellation pretty soon here. But when something's out of phase with each other, it can cancel the signal out completely, and then you'll hear either silence or it'll make it really thin if it's not completely out of phase. So you just want to keep that in mind. There is a plugin that you can get. It's called Peninsula. It's by BDL, Boz Digital Labs. It's free. Just do a Google search for it. Type this in. And what's really cool is if you throw this on any track, I throw it on my master track sometimes, it allows you to collapse your whole mix to mono just in case you don't have an interface that allows you to collapse it to mono. So this is really nice to have just to do a little reference to make sure that when you are using stereo tools that you're not losing everything in mono. So we can definitely go over that too when we're using this. But yeah, let's dive in. I'll just show you a couple little tools that we can use. This is a song that I was working on with a female singer. I thought this would be a really good example. I had to bounce out big chunks of stems individually because this session was massive. There's a lot of plugins, a lot of background vocals. I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Yeah, you can see this session was pretty massive. I had quite a bit of tracks, quite a bit of plugins everywhere, so I didn't really want to have to go through trying to screenshot this one, but just wanted to show you this though. You can see that I do have quite a bit of vocals in the chorus here, and that's always really important when you're creating wide sounds. Is if you can have the singers or the guitar players or whatever instruments they're playing, have them do quite a bit of takes if you want something really, really wide sounding. And that's what I did here with the vocals. And all of these are stereo tracks. I actually start with having them record on mono tracks like this. And then after I'm done recording them, I just throw them on stereo tracks. That way I can get their left and right processed, EQ'd, compressed the same. But yeah, that's always really important when you want to do anything stereo as far as when it comes to vocals, is just getting a mass amount of stuff, especially in like pop music and stuff like that. But I wanted to use this because this is something that we could definitely showcase a wide stereo image on this one. So I'll just show you a little sample of it.
You're my love, don't let go of me.
Yeah, this is a track that I produced pretty recently for a singer named Alexis Christine. And so what we'll start out with is we'll show it on the instruments here. I'll show you some different tools here. One of the most popular ones is the S1 Imager by Waves. I don't really use a lot of Waves plugins, but I know a lot of people do. So I figured kind of jump in and show you kind of how this works. So let's start with the instruments here. Cool, that's what it sounds like without it, and then I'll show you some different things that we can do. We can extend the width, and then we can kind of shift it a little bit, and then we can also rotate left and right quite a bit on here too. And then if we go to our mid side here, then that's something that you definitely want to focus on with creating stereo imaging. Mid side, just being able to control the mid and the sides differently. You'll notice it'll be quite a bit of wide gain here. And then let's just collapse to mono. See how much we lose there? Something to always kind of pay attention to is when we're collapsing to mono. But this is a useful tool just because it allows you to really widen things out. I'll kind of show you what this sounds like on vocals as well. If we go here to these background vocals here. So yeah, I got this on the background vocals. Normally, I might put these on individual tracks. This is actually quite a bit of background vocals here, summed together. I think it's a good 20 of them that I bounced out. But just, again, whenever I do these tutorials, I always like to go and show you drastic measures so your ears can really hear what it does, and then always, kind of adjust later to where you need it to be. But this is a cool plugin because it really lets you widen things, and then you can also kind of shift and tilt things a little bit. So that's one that keep in mind of what you can do with it. Show you another one, really popular, Micro Shift by Soundtoys. Probably one of my favorite ones to use for creating wide sounds. I think it's really cool. It allows you to kind of delay one of the sides a little bit, also detune the sides differently, which is really cool. And then also to focus on different frequencies. And we have different styles, which is cool too. Styles 1 and 2 are based on presets on the classic Eventide H3000, and then style 3 is based on an AMS Neve stereo tool. But this is a really cool one. I usually use this when I do this. I'll use this actually as a send instead. That way I can control it in there, and so this is usually what I'll use it for. So I'll show you how I blend it after I show you the drastic version of it here. So that's a pretty drastic version of what you could do there. So let's actually move this down to our aux sum here and then just kind of blend it in, because this is usually what I like to do with a lot of stereo tools. And if we put in the lead as well. It's pretty subtle, but it definitely can help kind of wide things out. And basically, from my understanding, Micro Shift just kind of shifts one of the sides, either left or right, and you can either detune it a little bit or use tight or loose for your delay if you want it to be a little bit more in sync with the tempo, or just a little bit more loose kind of feeling, which the looseness can actually create a little bit more stereo imaging. This one too's got some cool little presets. I usually stay away from presets, but for some of these stereo tools, it's kind of cool just to kind of play around and see sometimes, because they got background thickener, which is pretty cool. Definitely kind of gives it that kind of feel. Fat wide pads be kind of cool if we check that out on our instruments actually here, because since I was using a lot of pads in here. Yeah, so you can definitely hear it widen out, but when I have it just completely at 100%, you definitely lose a little bit there. So just kind of ease up on that a little bit. So yeah, I really think this is a effective plugin. Let's move on to some different choices here. There's a free one by iZotope that's really cool. Again, I would probably use this as a send instead of directly on there as an insert, but kind of same process that we saw earlier with S1. Kind of control the width here. You know, and let's check to see what that's doing when we collapse it to mono.
Never, never, never stop loving you. Never, never, never.
Yep, so that we're pretty safe yet. We're not losing too much, but again, I am going pretty drastic. But this one's pretty cool to use too. It's based on one of the things inside the Ozone mastering um, effects here, but it's really cool. Ozone Imager just kind of lets you increase the width here to make things wider.
Never, never, never.
And let's put this on our aux end here, just kind of check out, see what happens when we blend it in.
Never, never, never stop. Never, never, never stop loving. Never, never, never stop loving you.
Yeah, so that makes that noticeable as far as wideness, which is definitely really effective to have. All right, just moving on here. Another thing that you can do instead of using effects and plugins that are used for stereo tools is you can actually do something that's called mid-side EQing. So we can EQ our mids, like things that are coming down the center, differently than what we would do with the sides here. So we could actually boost the levels of the sides quite a bit here. And so I'll show you that.
Never, 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 never stop loving.
Again, I'm going pretty drastic here, but just to kind of show you an example, this could help kind of widen things out. Usually with our lower frequencies, a lot of things are coming down the middle, and then higher frequencies, that's where a lot of the stereo stuff will come into play. So let's kind of check that out.
Never stop
And again, we're boosting the high frequencies on the sides instead of our full entire stereo mix here.
never, never, never stop.
So I'll show you that in the mix.
Never, never, never stop loving you. I will never, never, never.
Yeah, it just kind of helps a little bit there for creating that kind of stereo kind of vibe to it. Another kind of cool thing with EQing is if you switch to multiple mono EQing here, you can EQ the left and the right slightly differently on any plugin. This plugin right here actually would allow you to switch left and right, which is really cool. But just in case you don't have a plugin that has that option, like let's say that you have the REQ here by Waves, if you actually switch to multiple mono, you can EQ things differently left and right, which is really cool. So we turn this link off because when the link is on, when we switch from left to right, it stays the same. But if we take this off, now I can EQ the left and right a little bit differently. So if you see when I switch here, I'm able to kind of do things a little bit differently here. So I could boost this a little bit more. So let's check that out.
Never, never, never stop loving you.
You know, it kind of really shifts it, which kind of tricks the mind into thinking that it's stereo, which is cool because that's usually what we're aiming for when we're looking for stereo stuff, is how much difference is there between the left and the right channel. And the greater the difference, the wider the mix will appear, or at least it will trick our mind into thinking that it's wider. And you can hear that because there is quite a big difference here between the left and the right, where we really got this boosted in the middle here on the right side, and then we got the top end on the left pretty drastic here.
Never, never, never.
So let's hear that in the mix.
Never, never, never stop loving you.
Yeah, just a pretty cool, useful trick right there for doing the left and right differently. But like I was saying earlier with the Fab Filter one, it's really cool because if you right click, you can actually switch in between your left and right, which is pretty cool here. So then you could do things quite a bit differently if you wanted. Just kind of duck down here.
Never, never, never stop. Never, never, never stop loving you.
Yeah, so that's a really cool trick. I'll briefly show you another option just in case you have not seen my tutorial on it. Mid-side compression. You'll notice a lot of stereo stuff uses mid-side. This is cool. Same concept. We're going to compress the sides differently than how we would compress the mids. So this is a technique that can really make things kind of appear wider. I'm not going to go too in depth on this one because I actually have a full tutorial on this one. If you want to check that out on SoundOracle's YouTube page, if you just type in widen your mix using mid-side compression. So I'll show you this.
Never, never, never stop loving you.
Yeah, you can really hear how drastic that is right there with our mid-side compression, because what's really cool about this is we're really drastically compressing the sides. So we're making the sides pump, which then makes this whole background vocals appear like they're wider.
Never, never, never stop loving you.
I'll show you that on the instruments as well here. Yeah, so if you like that technique, feel free to check out the tutorial that I have on that one. I think that's a pretty solid technique to use there. All right, another option that you can do. I really like this one, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a plugin that kind of makes things pan back and forth. I like to use one called Pan Man by Soundtoys. There's ones that come stocked with Ableton and Logic, and if you watch later, you'll see that I have a little bit of in-depth stuff on Ableton and Logic stereo options as well. But if you don't have Pan Man and if you use Waves, Mondomorph does the same exact thing. Or you could automate this too. You could go in and you could draw in the same option here of just kind of left and right there, and then same thing with your left and right, just kind of going back and forth. But using a plugin, plugins are there for a reason to make things a lot easier. And so what I do for this, I'll show you what it does, and then I'll show you the actual technique that I use, but you'll hear that it's just going to kind of go back and forth, left and right. This one's really cool because it allows you to change the rate of how fast it goes. You see we're pretty slow here right now versus really fast. And it lets you choose how smooth it is. As you can see, this is hard left, hard right, really fast. And if we smooth this out, it kind of gradually goes back and forth. And for this trick, this is what I like to do. I like to use more of the smoother one. And then you see we can choose the width of it, kind of going back and forth. We can make it a little bit wider, and then we can offset it. We can make it bounce a little bit more to the right there and just a little bit more to the left, or we can come right down in the center. So I'll show you what this sounds like without it. Right. So what I actually like to do is let's go ahead and duplicate this. I like to use this on pads, and what I'll do is I'll duplicate the track and I'll blend it in a little bit. So then we have the regular pad coming straight down the middle, and then we have this pad, the same pad in the background, just kind of bouncing back and forth. So without it, with it. So that's a really drastic version of it. And let's smooth this out a little bit. I love that trick. Always kind of makes things appear wider because you got your dry signal coming pretty much down the left and right there, down the middle as well. And then you have this other signal that's just kind of rapidly moving back and forth, kind of creating this like whirlwind around the ears, which I think is super effective. I really like that for an option for using this as a plugin. One of the stock ones that comes with Avid here is stereo width. Not a big fan of this one, but just in case you are a Pro Tools user and you haven't had a chance to invest in any third-party plugins, this is an option that you could use. Kind of the same thing I was showing you earlier with that S1 imager and the micro shift and other things. We got an option to use width and then kind of delay it a little bit as well. So I'll show you this.
never,
I'll actually put this on the lead vocal.
never, never, never stop, never, never, never stop loving you, never, never, never stop, never, never, never stop loving.
So yeah, you can definitely see that that widens it up a little bit there. One of the best techniques for stereo tools though is doubling. And that's as far as if you're recording vocals or instruments, it's such a powerful tool. And that's why I have so many vocals here. You can hear it too. If I just kind of show you the background vocals here.
Never, never, never stop loving you. Never, never.
You know, on this track, there was like about 20 vocal tracks in there. And then for the males, there was about 6 or 8 of them. And I do that just so I can have, as far as humans, whether you're playing an instrument or you're singing, you're never going to be able to do it perfectly each time as far as pitch, timing, accuracy, timbre, tone, all that. And so it makes it appear wider because if you think of like if you're watching like a concert and there a choir is performing, it's super wide and full because there's so many people singing. So that's a technique. If you're in the studio and you're recording people, whether they're laying down guitar or string parts or vocals, have them double that and layer that one. I'm sure that's a technique that you're already doing, but just in case, something to think about. Another thing too is there's certain plugins like Reavoice here that allows you to double stuff. Which is really cool. It kind of creates a fake double. There's a lot of plugins that can do this. This is just the one that I have. You don't really have to do much for this one. You just kind of select your area. So it'll be this,
Never, never, never.
and we'll capture that, and it's just going to capture it in this plugin here, and then it automatically doubles it. And then what we'll do is you got to create a new track here. So we'll come down and then you just spot it in, and now we have a double here.
Never, 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 never stop loving you.
And basically it kind of just shifts the phase a little bit there. You can hear how it gets a little phasey. So this is definitely something that if you do spot it in there, you want to turn it down.
Never, never, never stop loving.
You know, you can hear how that makes it seem like it's doubled. We'll just check and see how it is in mono.
Never, never, never stop loving. Never, never, never stop loving. Never, never, never stop loving you.
Like I said, there's quite a bit of tools that'll allow you to do that as far as creating that double effect. Yeah, another option that you could use too is if you have some UAD plugins. This Precision one, just kind of one of the basic UAD plugins, but kind of the same concept that we're seeing before. It's really cool though because it lets you affect the different frequencies differently as well. And then there's some mid-side options too, so pretty cool. Let's throw this on the lead just to kind of switch things, and I'll actually probably switch to the bridge just so we can hear a different part of the song.
Yeah, I will always love you. I will always love you. Yeah.
That's why I like UAD though. Their stuff's always really smooth, but you can see I'm just kind of enhancing the ambience a little bit, so it just kind of makes it appear a little bit wider.
Yeah, I will always love you. I will always love you.
And then let's kind of affect the sides a little bit here.
I will always, I will always, I will always love you.
Yeah, and then it's kind of cool too because we can affect our EQ a little bit here too.
I will always love. I will always love you. I will always love you.
So this was just some things that I'm doing here too. Is I'm affecting the left and the right a little bit differently too, boosting the right side, because again, if we can make this appear different on the left and right, we're able to make it appear wider.
I will always love you. Don't wanna bring you down. Don't wanna
So let's check this out actually on these harmonies.
you. Don't wanna bring you down. I will always love you. Don't wanna bring you down. Don't wanna be brought down.
Yeah, so you can definitely hear how that affects it. So those are just some tools that I like to use around for stereo tools, stereo imaging. If you like any of these plugins and you want to learn more about them, just in the comment section below, just put it in there that you want to know more about those plugins, and I'll do a little tutorial review on those as well. All right, now we're going to hop over to Ableton and just check out some of their stock plugins. All right, so now I have Ableton open up here, and I just kind of wanted to show you a couple little options as far as stock plugins go too, because I know not everybody has, all the different FabFilter and UAD and Soundtoys plugins. So and I know not everyone uses Pro Tools, which is totally cool. I think a lot of DAWs are really powerful, and there's things in each DAW that I really like. So I definitely wanted to start touching on through these tutorials different things of what you could do in different DAWs as well. So just in case you have just the stock plugins for Ableton, I can kind of show you a couple things. Earlier, we kind of talk about panning and everything, so that's definitely something that we can throw on. I just have a duplicated track here, again, to show you kind of how that happens, because what I'm doing is the original sound, again, is something I got from SoundOracle and Triz's Ben Trappin' pack here. So if we add, one of the auto panners on there, just like we did earlier with Pan Man, or you could do with Mondo Morph, just something to kind of be able to add the, amount and rate of how fast it is. Usually faster kind of works a little bit better for this, just because it moves quickly and tricks the ears a little bit more. And then this is we can kind of maybe smooth it out. So if I trim that down a little bit and put it back in with the original. So that's definitely something that can help a little bit with creating that. I can show you a couple other things too inside Ableton that you can use for stereo tools and stuff like that. Chorus effect, that's a classic one that's been going on since recording got really huge back in like the 60s and 70s. A lot of people like this on guitars and vocals and stuff, because it gives it, the chorus effect of when the chorus hits, things get bigger and wider. So So that's, one option that you could do as well. And then you see too, we got different things like flangers, and be able to create phase too, because phase is always a really big one for creating that stereo effect and that stereo image. And I believe with phasers, all it's really doing is it duplicates the signal, and then it kind of delays one side, kind of like I showed you earlier when we flipped the phase and stuff like that. It kind of does that, where we duplicate the signal and then flip the phase, but then on one of the sides, but then offset it a little bit so it doesn't cancel each other out. But this is always, anytime you use one of these, you do want to pay attention to phase cancellation because it is based upon phase issues, which is again kind of cool because that's what can create the stereo image. But that's why you have to pay attention to phase issues when creating stereo images, because a lot of times what these plugins are doing are they're just kind of flipping the sound a little bit. Yeah, so you can kind of hear what we can do as far as the stock plugins in Ableton to create that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up Logic. There's a couple little stock plugins in there that we'll be able to open up and check out what you can do in there as well. All right, so I got Logic open up here. I got the same little loop thing that I had going on for the side chaining video, just in case you've seen that. So yeah, I'll just show you. You can find some stuff in Logic if you just go to imaging here, and you see, again, we got some stereo tools in here to be able to control the different frequencies. That's what I like about this Logic plugin is I can choose what frequencies I want to spread out a little bit, which is pretty cool here. So I'll show you what we got here without this. I'll show you with it here. You can hear too the bass gets a little muddy, so that's what I really like about being able to do this, because maybe the lower frequencies usually tend to come right down the middle, you know, being spread out a lot of times. Like you think about kick and you think about bass lines typically. I know there's like some synth basses that are stereo, but like you think of just like a typical bass line on a bass guitar that usually is coming right down the middle. So what's cool is you can control this so it doesn't muddy up things a little bit. And it just kind of lets you control your frequency spectrum to kind of widen things out a little bit too, as far as your order of harmonics there. And this is something that I would actually put on a send or duplicate the track and do it that way instead of just right on the mix there, just because I wouldn't want the full signal to be spread out that way. And then another option too is you have direction mixer here. Just a little bit smaller version, be able to just spread, choose how far you want to spread it out. You can also bring things into mono if you want. It also does have the mid side option too. So just some cool little options as far as Logic goes is, for what's unique to it. Those are some stereo tools. Of course, you always have your ability to have like chorus effects and flangers and phasers, just like we did in Ableton as well, and also to be able to do your panning techniques and stuff as well. So those are definitely some tools that you can use for stereo imaging. Hopefully that helps out. Widening mixes is a really popular technique and just really important for using it in today's music.
So I'm hoping that you got a lot out of this tutorial today. Hopefully there's some information that was useful. If you're getting a lot out of this but you want to see more, please feel free to comment below. Let us know what kind of tutorials that you want to see in the future, and Oracle and I can definitely make that happen. We're always trying to find the content that you want to see. If you're liking what you're hearing from me, you can find me everywhere on social media at Realistic Productions. You can find me at the web, realisticproductions.net. You can find my man SoundOracle everywhere at SoundOracle. And if you're looking for the best 808s, the best kicks, the best snares with the craziest loops and samples you can find on the internet right now, go to SoundOracle.net. Alright, till next time.